Okay, we are back. I'm not even going to go through the whole 5 minutes of let's just, wait for it to happen. I'm just going to go on YouTube right now to check again because now it should be working fine. I know the audio on TikTok is okay, but we got to make sure this is working. So that was the live stream that did not happen. This should be this one right now. I'm just going to go on YouTube. Yes, I figured out what it was. Okay, we're good. We are good. We're good to go. All right. Hello. Welcome. We had lots of tech issues in the first 5 minutes of this, which is what happens when you decide to live stream last minute. And OBS doesn't want to play games with you, or it's trying to play games with me, I guess I should say. So here's the plan for what I wanted to do today. The first thing I want to go over in this video is in this live stream, but it's going to be a video on the channel afterwards. So if you're watching the recording of this, if you're watching the replay of this, I should say, then you already know what you're getting into. But for the people who are watching live, the bulk of this is going to be on balance and growth. So how to balance and grow your skills in multiple languages. And then if I have time, I do want to have a separate conversation about my recommendations of goals and habits that I usually share with my students and clients that you focus on for your language studies, whether you're learning one or multiple languages. Now, this is going to be me sharing my screen. So if you're watching me on TikTok right now, you want to hop over to the YouTube channel because that's where you're going to actually see the visuals of what we're working on. And I am not going to waste any more time because the tech already wasted the time for me. So let's just dive into it. So this is the beloved, the beautiful Notion template. I actually have this in another format in Sheets. But this is the Balance and Growth Language Learning Tracker. Now the Sheets version is very similar. I prefer Notion. And so while I made it first in Sheets because it was really quick to do, I made the Notion version for the people like me that really love Notion. And so the goal of this is to really help you record your study tasks, reflect on them, identify patterns that you're noticing, things that are working well, things that are not working well, areas that you can improve on in your language learning routine. The goal is for you to be able to have a solid picture, some data that you can look at and say, is this working or not working and why not? The reflection process is something that I teach all of my students and clients. There is a whole more in-depth process inside of the Polyglot project, a slightly less in-depth version of it in Fluency Mastery Lab. And this is like bare bones basic, and it is completely free. So you can actually grab this tracker for yourself, and it comes in 2 formats. Now I'm going to walk through mostly the Notion version, but if I can, I'll try to bring up the Sheets version as well, but they work exactly the same. They're just in different formats. And so when you come here, you're going to see, you get to duplicate it. You're going to see all this additional stuff, the tutorial, which I'm actually going to update with this video right now here. And then you can access the Google Sheets version. Now there are 2 different trackers, and then there are the reflection prompts. So the things you ask yourself before doing each task, and the things that you think about when you're reflecting at the end of a day or the end of a week. If you're like me, daily reflection can be really tricky. And so I tend to focus on weekly reflections. That's a little bit more doable. That's something I can stick to and make consistent. And so the very first thing I want you to focus on is the task tracker for language learning. You're going to click on that in Notion. It's going to take you here. It's super simple. But there's a lot of moving pieces here, and I am using this video as a way to explain even more all the different pieces. So this tracker is for reviewing your tasks and reflecting periodically on the patterns that you notice, the things that you're doing or avoiding, the things that are working well and not working well, so that you can make strategic plans moving forward. So you're not just saying, oh, I don't like this textbook, I'm not going to use it, but you're saying this textbook is not helpful for me because it doesn't even align with my goals, or it is helpful for me, but I've been using it the wrong way. I've been approaching this textbook work in the wrong way because here's the things that I've avoided in the textbook. Here are the things that I really enjoy doing. Now here's my plan moving forward. So it really gives you that ability and ownership of your language studies. And so what you want to do in Notion, if you've never used Notion before, to create a new task, you can click here on new, or you can click on new up here. Either way, it's going to create one. This one will create one on the bottom of the list. This one will create one on the top of the list. But again, either way works. And there are just some examples here. So description is all about what tasks did you do. So, an article on topic X is what I did, or I listened to the podcast episode, I had a conversation with my tutor. What were the actual things that you did? And then the next thing you want to put in, so let's say, for example, I completed 3 lessons on Lingo Dear for Korean. Let's say that's the task that I did. Now, what did this focus on? What skills or areas did this focus on? Now, I color code so many things, and in the spirit of the color coding, speaking and listening, reading, writing, vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. Now, Lingo Dear's lessons tend to be listening, reading, writing, vocabulary, grammar. So I'm going to put all of those skills. Now, how long did I do this for? Now, when I work on Lingo Dear, it is anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. On an amazing day, I was about to say on a good day. On an amazing day, I can get an hour, but on an average, about 15 minutes is my expectation for myself. And so let's say I did about 15 minutes, and I'm going to put that in. This is a good gauge of just like how long are the sessions you typically do. So if you're someone who's trying to increase how long you study because it's something you want to do, not something that you feel you have to do, but something you want to do, then you can think about what are the ways that I can make my study sessions longer. Now, if you are feeling like you're not actually using that time wisely, it just helps you to reevaluate, well, if you only have 15 minutes, what are you actually going to do in that 15 minutes? And then the next thing we have is reflections about the task. So any thoughts that you had, any ahas, any things that you've learned, any things that you want to celebrate. This is also a great place to track wins as much as it is to track any setbacks that you've had. And so for the examples, if we were reading an article on a topic, maybe you found some new vocabulary. You were listening to a podcast episode. Maybe you felt a little overwhelmed by it because, but you did actually understand most of it. You felt overwhelmed. It was a lot, but you got through it. And maybe in the conversation with your tutor, you practice pronunciation. It's just a note to tell you, like, what did you do? So maybe this one for Lingo Dear, and if you don't know the app Lingo Dear, it's very similar to Duolingo. You can say, lessons on color, got about 95% on all 3. Just a note. Like, you can even list the actual vocabulary that you learned if you would like to. Now, the next sections that we have here are energy levels and impact. And these two are actually going to give you a value here in the priority column. So, for example, when I think about energy, especially because I work with a lot of introverts are introverts not because we're shy, because we are socially awkward or whatever are the words that people tend to want to put with introverts, but we are introverts simply because of energy, and extroverts are extroverts because of energy. How we use energy, how it depletes, and how we regain it and recharge it. Introverts regain energy from being alone, from being solo, which is why so many introverts are like, I need 3 to 5 business days after a good social session. Me, I'm an outgoing introvert, which is why so many people who talk with me are like, I would never have guessed that you're an introvert. Yeah, that's because it's not about being shy. It's literally about my energy. And once I've used it all, I don't get energy from being with people. I get energy from being by myself. So in this study session, let's say I was doing this Lingo Dear work. If it took a lot of energy for me to get this done. Maybe on a really rough day, it took me a lot of energy. I'm going to go upwards of 5. Let's say I'll put a 4 here. It took about 4 for me to get this done. And then what was the impact on my language studies? So this is like, how helpful, supportive is this to your language studies? How is this helping you to make, is this the most helpful thing for you making progress on a scale of 1 to 5? And so for me, I know that Lingo Dear work is about a 3 to 4 on a given day. I know there are things that I could do that are even more helpful, but this sets like the foundations. And so what this is telling me now is that Lingo Dear lessons are probably a medium priority for me. So if I'm struggling to get anything done, and Lingo Dear is one of those things on my list, Lingo Dear is probably going to be the second thing that I do, not the first. Now, the priority means that you want to get this done before anything else. So you'll notice that, for example, the article example right here, energy was low and the impact was high. The priority, therefore, is high. This is something you want to get done first. It doesn't take too much energy from you. The impact, so how it impacts your language studies, how it affects your progress, is higher. So you want to do this first, and then you might move into the Lingo Deer lessons if you have more of them. And then finally, podcast listening had a high impact, but also took a lot more of your energy. It's low priority. So that's something that you can do on your level of best. If you've heard me talk about levels of expectation, good, better, and best, then that would be your level of best, where you, if you have some extra time, you're going to do this last part. Now, fairly simple. That's pretty much what this tracker is all about. And the goal of this is to be able to look at your tasks over a course of the week. So think about, okay, what tasks have I been doing consistently or avoiding? How much time am I spending on them? What skills have I been consistently boosting and improving in? Have my energy levels been when completing this task? Like, how much did it take for me to do this? What was the impact of this? Have I been doing more high priority tasks or low? Like, am I blending them together? Like, this is going to be able to answer all of those questions for you, so you can be more strategic with how you're using your, not just your time, but your energy when learning languages. And so now we have the next sheet, and you can get to it here or go back to the main page. It's a daily reflection tracker. And so this is post studying. After you study, after you get the things done, you can review what worked and what didn't work. And so you'll put the date. Let's say we're doing today's date. Time of this recording, the time of this live is the 12th. And reflection on overall day. Was super tired. Struggled to complete those Lingo Deer lessons, but I did it. There we go. Now, one of the things that I talk about a lot is energy replenishing tasks. Again, this is helpful for anyone, but I think as an introvert, we don't always know how to do this because we look at extroverted ways of replenishing our energy, which is like talking with people. And that's the exact opposite of what we need. And so in this case, like, what was something you did that actually re-energizes you, that renews your spirit and your soul and makes you excited to do things? Maybe it's a nap. Maybe it's having a snack. Maybe it's reading or doing something creative. Maybe it's taking a walk outside. Maybe it's literally just sitting on your bed and having the music blasting in your ears for 15 minutes. Whatever it is that replenishes your energy and makes you feel a little bit less drained so that you can go out and do the talky things is what we're looking for. And in this case, also that helps you to recover so that you're not burning yourself out with your language studies as well. And so for me, it's usually like video games, reading, creative stuff, like crocheting, knitting, drawing, painting, baking, although baking a lot less now. Sometimes it's my hair. Like, I got options. And so I hope that this gives you the space to find your own sort of toolkit of energy replenishing tasks that you can do. That's so funny because the entire time I was on TikTok, the audio was cut out. Well, that's fine. If we're going to have tech issues, we're going to have tech issues. And that's just, what's going to happen apparently. Let me see if I do this. One second. Okay. We're just going to take this out. It's going to sound horrible over on TikTok, but that is okay. Let's keep going. So we have our energy replenishing activities and then the outcome for next week. So what are you expecting? And actually, I think, yes, I actually explain a lot of the things here below as well. So energy replenishing activities, describe the activity you did that replenishes, that, refreshes your energy. Outcome for next week. What are the goals or intentions for the following week? So in the example, improve speaking confidence by practicing daily. Maybe it's not daily. Maybe it's, 3 to 5 times a week. In this case, maybe for me with the Lingo Deer stuff, maybe my intentions is to earn like 120 XP for the week because Lingo Deer tracks things by XP. And I could also say complete 3 sections. So that's like 2 lessons per section or something like that. Maybe that's my intentions for the week. And then this is the thing that I absolutely love. And I'm going to hide that last part because that's the extra fun part here is motivation, confidence, consistency, energy levels. And yes, we're looking at energy levels again, but this is very important because it gives you something really special in the last part. And so with this motivation, we're thinking about how motivated were you that day to get the things done. So again, 1 out of 5, 1 being low, 5 being the highest. So let's say my motivation for getting the Lingo Deer stuff was about a 3. I wasn't as motivated. It was a little bit of a struggle. Now my confidence level, how confident in my abilities. Sometimes if I'm getting more questions right, my confidence is high. If I'm getting more questions wrong, I'm getting more frustrated. My confidence is a little bit lower. Let's say despite the fact that I wasn't as motivated and it was a struggle to get it done, confidence is 4 because it was stuff that wasn't too difficult for me, right? Let's keep going. Now consistency. How consistent have I been with this task that I put here? I've been fairly consistent, right? So we're going to give it a 4. And then energy levels. Again, I think on the last page I put a 3, but let's say that by the end of this task, my energy was at a 2, right? And my mood. What is my mood? Happy, excited, stressed, tired, frustrated. You can add in your own options as well. So you can literally right here, type in annoyed, and then you can create that. You can change the color if you'd like to. You'll change the color here. These are the color options in Notion, and you can do a very similar thing in the spreadsheet. But we're going to pretend that's not there. And let's say that I'm stressed. I'm stressy and depressy just a little bit. And so here's the thing that I really love about this one and the Google Sheet version is that once you put in all of these values, now you finally I get to show you that I am almost coaching you in this sheet. So depending on what values you put for motivation, confidence, consistency, and energy levels, I'm then going to give you some recommendations. So my recommendations, almost like if you were talking with me, what would I tell you? And so in this case, I'm like, hey, your energy levels seem kind of low. And it's important to prioritize energy replenishing tasks to recharge. So consider activities like taking a walk, listening to music, or practicing mindfulness to boost your energy. And I'm saying that's what I recommend you doing because consistency, confidence, motivation were okay. It was your energy levels that are impacting things. And that's what I want you to focus on in the following week or the next day as you're continuing with your progress. Now, let's say energy levels were okay. Now it's like, hey, consistency, keep it up. You're crushing it. Things look well because we're not trying to hit 5s across the board. We're just trying to stay consistent. And sometimes consistency is 3 across the board. But let's say, hey, you know what? My motivation was not there. It was not there at all. So I'm like, okay, you're feeling a little bit unmotivated. That's okay. Let's try to shake things up. Try diving into something new, setting some fun goals, and connecting with other learners because we got to reignite that motivation. And if you know anything about the strategies I teach on motivation, these are a couple of the strategies I actually share with my students and clients. And so this isn't me just like throwing things out there that I would never actually say. These are tips that I actually share with people, with the people who work with me right now. So you're getting almost like a free coaching session in this way. Now, what I am hoping to do, and I'm going to try to pull it up on my other screen and then pull it in, is I actually want to walk through the Google Sheet version as well, because I figure it's only helpful to go through both. But that's just one of my favorite parts of this sheet. And again, you can go to the task tracking page here. We're going to go to the main page. And then we have the final things, which are the questions, while I'm also pulling up on my other screen the Google Sheet. And so before each task, I want you to ask yourself these questions. Have I aligned this task with my language learning goals and my vision? So essentially, this is me asking you, or you asking yourself, do the tasks that you chose actually connect with the goals that you've set for your language studies? Or have you just pulled them out of a hat and said, yeah, I'm going to do this because that's what this person said to do? Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that at all. We want to make sure that it aligns with what you're actually trying to achieve in your language studies. Next one is, what specific impact will completing this task have on my journey? You'll notice that in the tracker, we actually talk about impact. So you can actually pull from that and then just, I mean, this is kind of before, but this is going to help you to actually fill in that impact area. So is it 1 out of 5? What is the impact of this specific thing for your language studies? The next question is, can it be simplified or expanded on? So simplified if it was too challenging and too frustrating. Expanded on if you found it too easy or you're looking for a bit of a challenge. Oh, we got to change here. Okay. The next one is, what will I miss if I skip this task? So if you decide to not do this, if you say, nope, I'm taking this out of my rotation of activities, what's going to happen? What are you going to miss out on? How is it going to impact your language studies? That's really what this is about. And then finally, how can I make this task more immersive or engaging? Immersion is kind of what you want to prioritize overall, because the more that you use the language, the more that it's going to be integrated into your brain, the more that you're going to be able to actually, recall what you need to recall. So like from memory, and actually recognize things when you hear it and when you see it. So that I would say is priority number 1. And then engaging with it. Engaging means it makes it fun. You actually want to do this versus feeling forced to do the thing and then it doesn't get done and you procrastinate, which we don't want. And then the last area is just some daily reflection questions. I say daily, but again, if daily sounds like a lot, you can do this on a weekly basis. So what is one task I completed that was most impactful to my overall language learning journey? Like if you had to only do one thing on a regular basis, based on all the things you've done in your language studies, what would that one thing be and why? And this is based off of the data that you've gathered from these 2 trackers. The next one is, how did I make space for replenishing my energy during my language learning activities? And if you didn't do that, talk about that. Oh, I didn't think it was a priority. Or sometimes we say things like, I actually have to earn it. My reward is rest. My reward is a nap. My reward is water, which it shouldn't be. Those are not rewards. Those are requirements. And I think there's a shift that has to happen around that. And reflecting on it on a regular basis is one of the ways that puts it in your face. Hey, is that a good idea? Answer no. Don't make them rewards. And then what adjustments can I make to this activity moving forward to ensure that strategic progress rather than just engaging in busy work? So what can you do to make sure that you're actually making progress and you're not just doing things for the sake of doing things in your language studies? And those are the 3 questions that I would recommend. So like this is the Notion version. And then what I'm going to pull up on the screen right now is the Google Sheets version and briefly walk through that one just so that you have options. So before I move on, this is in the dark mode just because I like dark mode, but you can get this in the bright mode as well. And then here we have, and actually might have to make it just a little bit smaller so you can see it on the full screen. Here we have the full task tracker for Google Sheets. Yeah, you can see it. Okay, so this task tracker here, very, very similar. It's structured a little bit different. So this is more of a checklist here. These are just questions and you can answer them on your own. On paper, I would recommend like an ongoing journal, and in Notion, you can create that. But same process of adding in your energy level. So let's say energy level is 2 and the impact is 4. It's going to tell you that the priority is high and it's going to color code it for you. So the same thing happens here as well. And when you go to the daily reflections tracker, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's a little easier to see it, that when you put in those values of, let's say motivation is 1 and confidence is 1 and consistency is 1, but your energy was great, right? Then it's going to give you my recommendation for that. Like, looks like you're facing some challenges with consistency, motivation, confidence, and energy in your language studies. So let's tackle that together. Try some smaller goals, try exploring new methods, and finding what sparks your passion for learning. And so I think that no matter which option that you choose for yourself, whether you're doing this one or the Notion version, it's going to give you exactly what you need in order to think about, how am I balancing what I'm doing in multiple languages? How am I prioritizing my growth or maintaining my skills in the languages that I'm learning? What is working for me? What is working against me or not working well? And similar to in the Notion, where everything is detailed above, these all have notes here to explain what each one is. And while right now we're in a live, this will be added onto my YouTube channel. So if you're watching the replay of this and you're already watching it, the link to this video will be officially here and you can watch it anytime to go over how to use this. Now, how do I use this in my language studies? Now, I have a more comprehensive way of doing this. Like, this is, again, the simplified version. It's like stage 1. Stage 2 is what I teach in Fluency Mastery Lab. Stage 3 is what I teach in the Polyglot Project. But what I do, even without writing it down, when I'm doing tasks, I'm always just like, why did I not want to do this today? Well, okay, what can I do about it? Like, do I need to pair it with some good music? And maybe that gets me in a really good headspace. Or do I need to do this last? Do I need to do this first? I have been reflecting for years with my language studies. So for me, it's a lot easier for me to do it without writing it down and tracking. And I track less often than I usually recommend for my students and my clients. But the core focus of this still stands, that if you are struggling to see progress in your language studies, if you're struggling to balance multiple languages, if you are struggling to know if something's working, like you added in a new resource and you're like, I don't know if it's helpful, I'm doing it, this is what I recommend for you. And so if you want a copy of this tracker, it is completely free. Both options are completely free. You can grab it. The link is in the description of this video. And let me know how it goes. Actually, what I want from you all, a question that I have. Let me just redo that because my brain just stopped working for a second. A question that I have for you all when it comes to those trackers is, what languages are you planning to use this tracker with? So are you doing this with all of them? And if so, let me know what languages. If you're going to focus just on one language at a time, what are those languages? And then what are you hoping to discover or learn about yourself by using this tracker? Because again, setting your intentions before diving into resources is one of the best things, because then you know what you're doing. You're not wandering and like, oh, this is nice, but why am I here? You're actually doing this for a purpose, for a goal. And then if it doesn't happen, you know it didn't work for you, you know it wasn't helpful. And then that's also feedback you can give me, because then I can make these resources better. And so I hope that you found this helpful. What I would love to dive into next, because I did promise this, I'm actually going to say goodbye to the people on TikTok. We're going to do this just YouTube. I'll go back on TikTok afterwards. Yes. There we go. Okay, so what I would like to do right now, while I have our live still going, is I want to go over some goals and some habits that I recommend for language learners, specifically around making more progress without forcing yourself to do more things to add to your language studies. So right now I'm just going on my phone to pull up the list. Goal. Achieve more with less. Okay. So when it comes to learning languages, again, in the spirit of this whole conversation of balancing multiple languages, growing your skills in multiple languages, there are lots of things that people recommend you do. Like, oh, do this, use this app, never use this app, don't ever do this. Everything is subjective when it comes to learning languages. There are things that work well for many people. There are things that don't work well for many people. And one of the things that I do as a language coach is I really help my people figure out what works best for them through strategic trial and error. I don't want to just say trial and error, because that's kind of like throwing, what do they say? Like throwing spaghetti at the wall. And it's less like that, because you don't know what to expect when you do that. But when you're doing this more strategic trial and error, you are doing this with a vision. You kind of know what you're going to expect, either A or B. And then if you get A, next strategy, here's what we're going to do next. If you get B, then here's what we're going to do next. It is the gathering of data so that we can continue to improve what we're doing in our language studies. And so rather than telling people like, use this app, go get this resource, again, it depends. I usually recommend some different goals and habits to set for yourself. Now, many of these, I won't say most, many of them are personal because it's about how you expect to use the languages that you're learning. There are some that I feel like are universal or are really good for like a holistic improvement, let's say. So there are 6. There are 3 different goals and 3 different habits that I recommend, and I'm going to walk you through them one by one. This is also in my guide, Achieve More with Less. So if you are someone who wants to have the PDF version of this along with the worksheets, it's a little bit of a workbook. There's some sections where you get to answer questions about it. If you want that, it is completely free. I'm also going to put the link to that in the description of this video, but let's dive into it one at a time. So the very first one of the 3 goals, first goal is expanding your vocabulary, recall, and recognition skills. And this is big. Many language learners don't even know anything about recall and recognition. I think many of the people who do know about that are the people who have dived into flashcards. If you know flashcards, if you know Anki, then you know recall and recognition, because those are different. Those are ways that you can categorize your card sets, your decks, right? So recall, for those that is the first time that you're hearing it, recall is being able to remember information so that you can use it. So for example, if you're like, how do I say the word car? You have to recall the word car in the language that you're learning. Versus recognition is when you see it, when you hear it, being able to hear it and see it and go, oh, I know what that is. Many of us, not all of us, many of us have stronger recognition skills than recall skills, because recognition is all passive. It's when we're listening to lots of content and reading lots of things. You can recall, you can recognize it in conversation. You can recognize it when it's written down in a book. But if you had to use the word yourself in conversation, you don't remember what the word is until someone else says it and you're like, oh my God, really? Really? I actually had a situation like that recently. And see, I can't recall the word again. It was, you know what, this is going to bother me. I'm going to look up the word right now because, yeah, it's for, yes. See, I just got it again. So I was trying to think of the word for furniture in French. And I mean, not in French, in Spanish. And I was like, I know I should know this word, but I don't. Okay. Recall skills for this word furniture in Spanish. Now, I looked it up in the dictionary and it said muebles. And I was like, what do you mean you didn't know that? Because I play a lot of video games in other languages and a lot of like world building, city building. I know that word. I can recognize it when I see it. But when I'm trying to remember it in my brain, even right now, as I was trying to tell you that word, I couldn't recall it. And so being able to improve on your recall and recognition skills of vocabulary is really, really important. Now, in the actual workbook, I dive into a lot more specifics. And again, it's completely free, so grab it. But some of the things that I talk about here are just like, again, there's a lot of words that we just need to know what it means when we see it. You're never ever going to use this word in conversation. Maybe it's specific slang that you know you're never going to say out loud. Maybe it's very technical terms that you're never ever going to say out loud. But it's important to know it when you see it. Think about, and I'm giving this example as a native English speaker, there are tons of videos where people are like, do you know how to say this word out loud? It's words that we've read, we know what they mean, but we've never actually said them out loud. And so the recall skills of how to say them is not there. Things like epitome, which is epitome. Or I remember seeing someone say man's laughter for manslaughter. And that to me was probably the best. And so words that you see, but you've never actually said out loud. And so I dive into more of the specifics of how to, like, what the differences are between them. But my recommendation is to prioritize recall and recognition in equal measures as much as possible. So like you do one for a little bit, then you do the other. Maybe you do both at the same time. If you're doing multiple languages, I adjust as needed. I was about to give like, do this and do that, but it really depends. It depends on so many different things. And it's one of the things that I talk about in Conversations Influencing Mastery Lab. And if you're looking for like a resource to actually help you with recall and recognition, I always say start with sentences over isolated or individual words. And I have an entire course on Sentence Building Pro. So I'm going to link that down in the description as well. If you want to check it out, it's just a $9 course, but it is probably there's someone who just gave some feedback on it. And they were like, this course is way more than $9 in value. And I was like, thank you. I'm glad, because I literally made it for the me who needed it. And then was like, hey, why don't I just share this with people? So first goal, expanding your vocabulary and recall skills, your vocabulary recall and recognition skills. Now, the next one is I want you to set the goal of improving your confidence when using the target languages, when using the languages that you're learning. Many of us don't really think about confidence. We just say we will do it when we are confident, but we don't actually think, what can I do to build my confidence? We just think at some point we're going to feel confident. And confidence comes in a few different forms. One of the things that I've talked about when I did my Languaging with Confidence workshop series is that we often build confidence when we build trust in ourselves. We lose a lot of trust when the expectations that we've set have not been met. When we say we're going to do something and we don't do it, or we say that we're going to achieve XYZ and we don't do that. And so one of the ways that you can build back your confidence is by not breaking the promises that you set with yourself. So that can mean, for example, lowering your expectations to make it really, really difficult to not win. You're like, instead of saying I'm going to study for 15 minutes, I'm going to study for a single minute. I can't not do that. It's near impossible for that to be difficult for me. Or instead of writing an entire page or even an entire paragraph, I'm going to write one sentence. That's it. Now I've won. Now I'm proving to myself that I can do it. My confidence is growing because I know that I can, because you have the evidence that you can. And that's what I want you to do with this one, is improving your confidence. So thinking about what impacts your confidence. And I'm actually going to try to link to that workshop series as well, if you want to dive into the full experience of what I talk about when I say building your confidence as a language learner. Now, the next goal that I recommend you set is reaching conversational fluency in your target languages. I say conversational fluency because if you've been in this community for any length of time, you know that everyone has a different definition of fluency. Some people say it's this, some people say it's that. Conversational fluency is there's a little bit less nuance in that. Everyone kind of sees that as the same thing. We all have the same understanding of that. And so when it comes to being conversational fluent, that's being able to articulate your thoughts to someone else, to say what you're trying to say to someone else and be understood, and also to understand them when they're talking to you, again, whether it's out loud, whether it's in writing. And so what are the ways that you are actively using the languages that you're learning from a beginner on? This is where a lot of people do things like immersion, all Japanese all the time. I don't even know if is that still a thing? I know it was a thing when I was learning, but that was like 2012. I don't even know if that's still a thing. If it is, please let me know in the comments of this video. But also things like Speak from Day One. The goal of the Speak from Day One is to be using the languages as much as possible. And so what are you actively doing to not just learn the language, but to use the languages in your day-to-day life? And those are the 3 goals that I would recommend you set. So once again, we have expanding your vocabulary, recall, and recognition skills. This is about improving your confidence in the languages that you're learning. And it's about reaching conversational fluency in the languages that you're learning. 3 goals. Any goals you set outside of that, that is on you. That is up to you, I should say. On you sounds kind of negative. It's up to you. And when I say goals, I'm thinking milestones. These are the things you want to reach. It tells you that you're going in the right direction or you're not. And this is the direction that I recommend you go in. Go in the direction of these 3 goals. Now we have the 3 habits that I recommend. And goals are the milestones. Habits are the regular actions that you take to build up your routine. And so the first habit that I recommend you set is to study your target languages for at least 10 minutes each weekday. Now, notice how I didn't say every single day. I did not say daily. I think daily studying is unrealistic. And also, when you get to a point where you can use the language more and more and you you start to just wean yourself off of studying, you're like, well, now what? I don't feel like I feel like I'm supposed to be doing things. And so, one, we reevaluate what studying means. And two, I say 10 minutes each weekday. That gives you 2 buffer days to do what works best for you, and not feel pressured to do things that just don't work for you in your language studies. And so for me, for example, I tend to say 3 to 5 times a week. That's my go-to for everything. 3 to 5 times a week. I treat it like a job in that I give myself 2 days off. That's me coming from the teacher background of having 2 days off a week. Let me just adjust that a little bit. All right. Because it is like extra bright in here, but that's okay. So first habit, study your target languages for at least 10 minutes each weekday. Now, my recommendation, if you are struggling to keep track of your studies and to actually stay consistent with this, I have a 365 study schedule template. It is a study schedule resource for every single day of the year, and you get to, on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually basis, check on your progress, review your progress, and also just document it so you know how consistent you're being with that 10 minutes each weekday. And actually, what I want to do, I should have been doing this in the video. So I'm going to ask some of the questions now, and then when I go back and edit, I will just add them in the right order. But for the first goal of expanding your vocabulary, recall, and recognition skills, the question I want you to ask yourself is, how does my current study plan help me to understand new words better and remember the ones that I've learned? That's the question I want you to ask yourself for this first goal. For the second goal, the question I want you to ask yourself is, what is the biggest cause to my lack of confidence? And how does this show up in my life? So ask yourself this question, take some time to go through it before you move on to the next goal and figuring out how to incorporate it into your language studies. The next question for the third goal, the goal of reaching conversational fluency, I want you to ask yourself this question. How does my current plan and schedule help me to reach my goals of using the languages that I'm learning? And I want you to answer that question for yourself before moving into the habit. And now for the habit 1 that we just went over, study your target languages for at least 10 minutes each weekday. The question I want you to ask yourself is, how can I add 10 minutes of studying every weekday into my current study schedule? 10 minutes. And that's 10 minutes maximum, not 10 minutes minimum. That means up to 10 minutes. How can you do that on a regular basis? Maybe this is your opportunity to make things more fun. Or this is now like more plugs. I just recently, at the time of this video, released Polyglot Delights. And these are designed for 5, 10, 15 minute study sessions. And so you can literally just pull one of these activities and go, I'm just going to do that one. I don't even have to think about it. That's what I'm doing today. And get it done. You get to do these things. Now, the second habit I want you to focus on is tracking and celebrating your study milestones. Celebrate your wins, celebrate the milestones that you're reaching, big or small, and I want you to track them. And what I mean by this is literally write them down. Have them written down in a notebook, have them written down in Notion, have them written down in a spreadsheet, because I want you to be able to look back on your progress and see how far you've come. Sometimes, especially if you're a perfectionist like me, it can be really difficult to see your progress and know if what you're doing is actually working, because we tend to focus on the negatives. This isn't working. This is horrible. This sucks. I failed. Mistake. And instead, what this allows for you to do when you're tracking your progress is to go, oh, wow, that's where I was. Okay, I'm not doing too bad. Or it's like, hey, you see where you were before and you're not there right now? Reevaluate. What has happened? And how can I make this better? How can I make my routine better? How can I make my schedule better? How can I make my plan better so that I'm actually making progress and not regressing? with my skills. And so my question for you when it comes to tracking and celebrating your milestones and your wins and your progress is, how can you start tracking this progress and making, let me redo that. How can you start tracking the progress that you're making in the languages that you're learning? And what will this look like? What will this look like in your study schedule? So all of these questions that I'm asking you, if you feel comfortable doing so, absolutely let us know in the comments. But otherwise, this is about you. This is what I want you to do for yourself. And then finally, our third habit, I want you to practice using your target languages for 2 times a week. Goal is, and you'll notice that they're connected, the goal is to reach conversational fluency. How are we going to do that? By using the languages that you're learning for 2 times a week. And I actually outlined this in the guide. But the question I want you to ask yourself is, how can you add more practice, not just more study, into your current routine? Because these goals and these habits are connected. In order to reach the milestone, you want to build the habit. And you can build the habit and never have a goal. But you can't really reach the goal without a habit, without a routine. So if nothing else, focus on the habits, but I recommend both because milestones, again, tell you if you're going in the right direction or not. So as you're focused on the goal of expanding your vocabulary, recall, and recognition skills, this is helping. The way that you do this is by studying for at least 10 minutes every weekday. If you can use those 10 minutes every weekday to help you improve your recall and recognition skills in vocabulary in the languages that you're learning, you're going to reach that milestone. In order to improve your confidence when studying your target languages, what I recommend you doing is tracking your progress and celebrating your wins and your milestones. If you track and celebrate those milestones and wins, you are going to boost your confidence. It is guaranteed, because you start to pay more attention to what's working and what you're doing well. And you're like, oh, I guess I can do this. Again, you're building almost like your evidence bank of what you can do in the languages that you're learning. And then in order to reach conversational fluency, you gotta use the language. And my recommendation is 2 times a week. So if you focus on that habit, it's gonna help you to reach that skill, that goal, that milestone. And so again, if you want the entire, I keep knocking my mic. If you want the entire guide for this, where I go a little bit more in depth in this, I give you that space to answer those questions. And I give lots of recommendations of resources that you can use, resources that I've created that are going to be really helpful and complementary to this process. Then definitely go and grab that. But I think that's everything that I wanted to say for today. So I hope that this long live was helpful. What I'm going to do with this video is actually take it, cut it down, cut it into 2 separate YouTube videos. They're going to go up on the channel soon, and they're going to be linked in all the places that they need to be linked in. But again, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you around in my next live. And bye, everybody. I think that's it. After all the tech issues that we've had, we made it. We got through it.